Many people say finding out who you are is really difficult, but I would like to challenge that. Like, who am I? Why should you listen to me? Well, a little backstory. I used to be very depressed and I didn't like life. But nowadays I enjoy life. Like, I love it. I am happy to be alive. So I'm gonna tell you guys about my experience and maybe I hope hopefully it will help you find out who you guys are. So, quick disclaimer, when I say find yourself, I do not mean you completely lost. You just bury underneath all the circumstances of life and all the unnecessary stuff. So, when I say find yourself, it's just try to understand yourself and figure out where certain traits come from and yeah, and redefine yourself. So, for a better life, or I don't know, just to understand yourself. Okay. So, the first thing that you should always look at when you're trying to find out who you are is your interest. I know it sounds like obvious, but so your interests are basically they're a gateway into your soul because it shows you what you enjoy. And I know that most of you have had that you have to follow your highest excitement to find out your purpose. So if you know what excites you, what makes you happy, you can find out who you are because you can find out why that makes you happy. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. In my case, for example, I grew up liking everything that was supernatural, everything that was fantasy related. I loved it. I devoured. For example, witches, I'm into it. Vampires, I love it. Like, don't ask me. I'm Team Edward. I just love it. And aliens and stuff, I also love it. But the funny thing is, I always love it when it was light, not too dark. So that always like it actually puzzled me because I love witches and stuff, but when it gets like really, really dark, I get scared. Like I really get scared. So I always wondered about that. And then I found out like the root of it is actually based on my childhood because I didn't grow up in a religious household, but things like that, like things that are related to spirituality was not really encouraged. It was seen basically like the work of the devil. So there was always the fear of spirituality in me. So that's why, like, even when I enjoy those fantasy related stuff, when it gets to a certain extent, certain level, I'm kind of like, okay, I have to log out. This is getting too much, even though it isn't actually. I just didn't understand it.
So once I started understanding it, I realized that spirituality promotes togetherness and it answers some of my questions that were bothering me and was able to explain things that I sort of knew but didn't know how to put it into words. Sometimes I still struggle with that. So when I started slowly accepting spirituality, I found myself accepting bits and bits of myself, especially bits that I threw away because I was like, it makes no sense. And through that, I gradually gained more insight about myself. Yeah.
Like, I'm actually scared of spirituality because that was what I was like taught as a child. So that was something like once I started my spiritual journey, I had to like I had to untangle that one. And it took a while, but I got over that fear and yeah. Here we are today. Yeah. Take a look at your life. Like find out what you like, how you expressing it, or how you using it actually. And once you know how you're using it, how you're expressing it, and how it relates to you, you could find out key aspects of yourself. Another key method to find out who you are is to ask questions. When you ask questions, you have to ask yourself the questions, not outside person, not external entity, just yourself. Because in a way, you have the answers, you just are not aware of it. Ask yourself questions. These questions could be about yourself, or it could be about just general stuff. But if the question keeps coming back, it's it's telling you something, and you have to find out what it's telling you. In my case, for example, I used to wonder why people will hurt each other, and it used to puzzle me. For a long while, I didn't have an answer to that because I tried to think about it, it just wasn't working. So it was after COVID. I came across a video of Jill Swan, and then she was talking about this connection. And back then, I was like just started out in diving into the concept of oneness. So I was like really hungry for knowledge, to be honest. And then I saw a video of her, and then she explained that when people feel disconnected to one another, then it could happen that they hurt each other. And then I was like, huh, it makes sense because then I start to look at my life. Like the people that I call my friends, I would like do whatever possible to not hurt them. But then the people that I don't care about, well, I would try not to hurt them, of course, because that's just common sense. But our connection is not that deep. It's just like you just there. And yeah, you exist, I exist, and I leave you be, and that's all. But to the people that I actually have a deeper connection, I will go miles. So I was like, huh, it makes sense. So when we feel disconnected to other person, then it's easier for us to cause harm towards that person. So that was back in 2021, 2022. Well, now that the answer to that question has grown, like, does expand because I realized like disconnect being disconnected is one of the reasons why. But also being ignorant is also a reason why people hurt each other. Because if you don't know better, you cannot do better. I know you guys are familiar with Maya Angelou, the saying that goes, once you know better, you do better. That is true. But if you don't know better, you cannot do better because certain things we accept it as part of the culture and we don't ask why we do it, we just accept it. And so some actions we just we just don't think about it. That's all. We just don't think about it. So basically it's just ignorance. Yeah. Another reason why people actually hurt each other is partially themselves. Because you can only I don't want to say you can only meet others to the extent that you meet yourself, because that's too generalizing it. Yeah. So basically, depending on your triggers and stuff, you can accidentally hurt someone even though that was not your intention. So heal yourself, people. Because if not heal, you can actually cause harm to someone that you actually never intended on hurting. So that's also an aspect of it. So yeah. So those are the types of questions that you, if you find yourself asking, that you can dive into, and that will bring you back to you. Because these questions, yeah, I ask, okay, so basically disconnection, ignorance, something flew in my eye, sorry. Ignorance and being unhealed is like some of the reasons that cause people to harm each other. And I was like, okay, so how do I fit into that? I had to be honest with myself in that instant because I know better now, so I had to do better. Once you know better, you do better. So I asked myself, like, okay, so how do I fit? What are my triggers? And so on and so on. So basically, every question you find yourself asking, it can be a pathway into finding out who you are. If you just direct it properly, that's one. And if you're being honest to yourself, because you can if you're not being honest to yourself, then that's it. You will end up somewhere else, and your whole body, your instinct will tell you that you're wrong. But if you don't want to look into it, then that's on you. So definitely be honest with yourself when you ask yourself the why and why. You can also ask other questions like, why do I act this way? Why am I always pulling back when people get close? Those are also questions to ask. And then you'll find out that maybe in the past you were hurt, and then that's one of the reasons why you pull back when people like approach you. And then you can try to heal that. So basically asking questions, yes, and answering them honestly is the second method to find out who you truly are. Mm.
For the next method, please exercise caution. If you find yourself losing control, please seek help. Please seek help. Also, don't live in the fantasy, live in the physical manifestation of the world. Please.
Another Yeah, another method is daydreaming, people. Daydream. Please do that. Because when you daydream, you can find out so much about yourself. Well, I found out so much about myself by daydreaming. For example, when I started daydreaming, I was not in a good place. I'm not gonna lie. So every single time I imagine myself in some of my favorite books, because I will create like stories in my head and then insert myself in the story, create a new story, completely new story. It actually helped storytell my storytelling skills because as a child I was terrible at that. But now I think I'm somewhat okay. Yeah. So yeah. So back then I will be like, okay, I will imagine myself, for example, in Twilight, create like a whole new story about Twilight. And then even though I know the new character that I inserted in the story is me, is the representation of me, I also I always make sure that you cannot find any trace of me in them. So basically they're a completely new person. So me in any other scenario in my fantasy was a complete new person. So that was something that I used to do. And at first I didn't realize it. And then eventually I changed it. I start inserting more of me into that person. And then it switch again. And I don't know, I remove myself from the fantasy and start imagining my life as it was back then. And I imagine my life as it was back then, right? And then I will put like some crazy element into it. It's not like sometimes I will plain right like go back into fantasy, and sometimes I will stay in the 3D, and it's just me experiencing stuff. Basically, it's suffering. I will inflict suffering on myself, even though I'm currently the author of it, right? But then over time, that changed into me just like in my fantasy now. I'm just chilling. I'm just going after my dreams, and every single time I get it, and no, I'm not struggling anymore. That was something I had to unpack. Like, why do I have to struggle to get anything? So, so from like now with my awareness and stuff, when I look back, I realize, huh, when I started like daydreaming, I was just to escape the reality. That's why like it was me, but not me, someone completely new because I didn't like who I was. And then over time, as it changes, was because I start accepting bits and bits and bits of myself, and then accepting my situation, circumstance back then. And now that I'm like, yeah, putting myself in stories, be like, yeah, I'm this, I'm that, and no suffering. It's me untangling the idea that you have to suffer to get something because I'm pretty sure like all of you, most of you grew up with the concept that if you do good things, you get rewarded. If you do bad things, you have to be punished. That's one. And also the concept like from from doing nothing, nothing comes from nothing. Yeah, nothing comes from nothing. I almost translated in German. Nothing comes from nothing. So those are all like little things that were like drilled into us, and then we grow up with that, not realizing that we're inserting that into every single aspect of our lives. So that's also a way to know, to find out more about yourself, because once you realize those patterns, you can figure out what stage you are in what stage you are in life. That's one, and you can also figure out what beliefs you have, and also figure out if they work for you or they don't work for you. So basically, you have to be awake. Like once you start asking questions, you have to be honest and be awake and question every single thing. Because only by doing that, you get to a place where you can actually see those patterns clearly. You can develop that with time. Definitely, that comes with time. That is just part of it. It's like it's guaranteed that you would develop it with in time. But you have to be honest to yourself, because if you're not honest to yourself, you cannot see it. Even if you see it, you would choose not to accept it. That's also another aspect. Accepting stuff. Like taking a look at yourself. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's hard because you see things that you are like, no way, that is part of me, but it is, and it's best to accept that part of you because It's there for a reason. Every single part of you is there for a reason. Once you understand the why, the questioning again, you can you can make it work for you. hmm You can make it work for you. Definitely. Like, let me give you an example. I Let me see which example I should give you because there's a lot. And my head is like running 10,000 miles. Mm, yeah, okay. So I'm an overthinker, right? And so I would sit in my head for hours just untangling stuff. And normally, well, before I became aware of it, I was like just tangling the negative stuff and then just going over it again and again and again. And once I became aware of it, I decided to like use it because I cannot change my overthinking. I can only use it to make it work for me. So I was like, so whenever I like sit in my head and I start having like negative thoughts and then it starts spiraling and stuff, I will let myself spiral. I will not control it because I'm like, it is what it is. I will let myself spiral. But while I spiral, I will insert small nuggets in there, and that will change the way it I spiral. And then eventually, I will find myself completely calm. I will get new perspective from the spiraling, and I noticed that over time I spiral less because instead of going into overdrive, my brain was like immediately searching for like different point of views to like put in there, and that just stops me from going into overdrive and spiral around for nights and days. It was horror, I'm not gonna lie. But once you know how to like make those elements of yourself work for you, you figure out that there's actually nothing stopping you. You just have to understand it, understand why it has gotten to that extent, and then make it work for you in your present form. Because the other thing is you constantly change it. So yeah, what you're today might change tomorrow. Like the person I'm currently am right now was not the person I was 6 months ago. Mm-mm. No, no, that person had a terrible fear of being seen, and it was terrifying. But over the last 6 months, I kind of like walked through it. Partially, it was my inner work, but also I met certain people who showed me certain aspects of them. So, them just being themselves, and that inspired me, and I was able to let go a little of this fear of being seen. And now I do videos, which is something 6 months ago I'll be like, yeah, sure, I will do the video, but for myself, never let anyone see that. But yeah, that has changed. So, to conclude this, I would say just meet yourself where you are, accept it, even when it's hard, accept it, and listen to yourself, ask questions, and daydream a little, but not too much. Daydream a little, but not too much. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you. Bye.